Talk about bipolar. What would define it?
Bipolar, there was a time when it was called manic depression, and of course the term now today is bipolar. There are many different ways that people are bipolar. I've been very fortunate. In my case, I can only talk about mine basically, but I've worked in the field, so I can talk a little bit about other people's issues. But for me, my diagnosis was relatively easy to treat. I always went high. I never really experienced very much depression. I always was high. And interestingly enough, my mom, who was also bipolar, she was always high. Always high. She didn't.
And what is high?
High is an elevated mood. I mean, my nature is to be elevated anyway, but in those years when I was having real problems with it, I would become so elevated that I couldn't sleep, and I would manifest bizarre behavior, and that would end up escalating into the title of the book, which is From Paper Slippers to Paperback, and I would end up being hospitalized. I had a series of hospitalizations and then I had to come out of those, and then it wasn't until I was diagnosed properly. I started having hospitalizations in my 20s, and it wasn't until I got into my late 30s, early 40s that I was diagnosed properly, and I was put on lithium. And lithium was really even though they didn't know in those years how much to give, they gave me too much of it. But I functioned very well on it, even in spite of the side effects. And I built a business, and it was successful. And I also worked in the field. I went to an organization called MDSG, Mood Disorder Support Group, which is at Beth Israel Hospital. They meet on Friday nights, and I learned a lot about it there. I went and got help, and then I trained to become a facilitator, and I started a young people's group. I found that one of the problems we had was that young people would come and they would hear horror stories of people's history of years of being ill, and they wouldn't come back. So we started a young people's group, and now I think there are 3 or 4 groups every Friday night of young people coming in, because they relate to each other differently. So
does that help or reinforce the problems?
Reinforce?
Well, if they hear that people are having all the same troubles, is it comforting, or does it simply lull them into accepting the behaviors?
No, I think what it does is when they're in a group with their contemporaries, it's very different. There's a whole different dynamic with young people. They don't have the long history of being ill, and I think that works very well for them.
So should people who have a long history gravitate to groups with people who have a long history?
It seems to be the way that it works. When I led my group, one of the most difficult things in the years that I've done it is that people are not medicated properly. And there's all the issue of if you don't have really the kind of insurance or the wherewithal to be able to get the best medical care, and so a lot of, and one of the things that I stressed and I worked with in all my groups was to try to have them develop tools to become active, to become their own best advocate for their health. And it's true of everything, but particularly people with any kind of a bipolar issue. Lifestyle plays a major, major role. Nutrition, the way you eat, proper sleep,
exercise.
Exercise, absolutely. Exercise is one of the wonderful way to stay centered. Meditation is another wonderful tool. Meditation, a lot of people today, they make a big deal about it, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. Just looking at the ocean is a meditation. Slow running is a meditation, it doesn't have to be complicated. Everybody can find a way.
Family help or hurt?
A family can be very helpful. The way a family can be helpful, we have a group at Beth Israel of family and friends that they get help at the same time. So everybody is really in recovery together, and it's very helpful.